Israel must become the dominant power in the Middle East, okay? Iran must be taken out of the equation. And what they can do is go around the world and create as much chaos as possible. And this will, of course, lead to the rise of the Antichrist.
What you just heard is not from a movie, not from a random conspiracy page. This professor is connecting all global events into one single theory. The real question is he crazy or is he a genius?
The first thing that doesn't make any sense is America's war on terror. Yes, I understand that America was attacked on 9/11. I understand that. But why did they have to go attack Libya and Iraq and all these other places that have nothing to do with Al-Qaeda? Okay? And the answer is they're trying to create something called the Greater Israel Project. They're trying to have Israel become Pax Judaica, the grand power in the Middle East, because that's important in all secret societies. Israel must become the dominant power in the Middle East, okay? So this helps us understand why the war of terror happened the way it did. That's number one. Number two is, right now, America is threatening to attack Iran. Why would they do that? Because in order for Pax Judaica to come into being, Iran must be taken out of the equation. Iran must be destroyed. Then, if that were to happen, there would be no challenge to the power of Pax Judaica, okay? Does that make sense?
Iran isn't just a country. It's an independent power structure. It doesn't fully submit to the dollar system. It doesn't rely on Western security. And in any global order, independent actors are always the first targets.
All right. The third thing is Silicon Valley and AI. So right now you have AI, ChatGPT, which doesn't really do anything, okay? It makes cool images on your computer and helps you cheat in school. Okay, that's about it. But at the same time, all around the world, everyone's spending billions, trillions of dollars on data centers, right? So everyone's putting money into AI. But then you're like, well, how can you make money off that?
Let's be honest. AI doesn't make trillions because it writes essays. It makes trillions through data. Behavioral data, psychological data. In China, social credit systems already decide who can travel, buy, or work. The West is moving toward the same system.
But if the answer is to create an AI surveillance state, that makes a lot more sense, right? So what is a surveillance state? Very easy, guys. We have it in China, okay? It's digital ID and digital currency. And the idea is that everything you buy, everything you do, will be tracked. And so they can create a profile on you. This profile will tell the government who you are, how you behave, what you think. Not only that, the government can also manipulate how you think, how you behave. Okay? And this is, of course, called the mark of the beast. Right? And so that's what Pax Judaica is. Pax Judaica is a global AI surveillance system. Okay? It also helps us explain immigration in Europe. Okay? Because the war on terror, you've sent these millions of refugees from Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq into Europe, which is causing a lot of conflict in Europe. Why would that happen? Well, for Pax Judaica to come into being, you need to destroy the world. Okay? So, I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying like, if the goal is Pax Judaica, it does help us connect the dots. It helps us explain why things are happening the way they are. Okay? Also, the last thing is anti-Semitism, okay? So you may have noticed, if you're online, people don't like the Jews. And this is like out of nowhere. After October 7th, you have anti-Semitism all over the internet. Now, I have criticized Israel before. Okay? But anti-Semitism is not the same thing as anti-Zionism, right? Zionism is the belief that Israel is a chosen people and the promised land and all that, okay? But Judaism as religion, it's perfectly fine. So why would people not care about the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, okay? And you can argue it's all purposeful because remember, the part of the plan is to force the Jews to return to Israel. That's very important for this plan to work out. Okay? It's key. That's why you are seeing so much anti-Semitism around the world today. Okay? And the last thing, of course, and this is something we'll discuss, is something called the red heifers. So red heifers are red cows that are perfectly genetically modified. And you need the red heifers in order to, you have to sacrifice the red heifers to purify the ground in order to reconstruct the Solomon's temple, okay? And guess what? They've already sacrificed the red heifers. So it seems as though everything is in place. All right? They're moving towards Pax Judaica.
This isn't ancient mythology. These discussions exist today inside religious and political circles. And when beliefs start shaping policy, timelines accelerate.
So, let's discuss what will happen in the short term and in the long term if Pax Judaica really is the end goal, okay? So, right now you have Israel fighting wars everywhere, okay? The main enemy right now is Iran. In Europe, you have the Europeans about to go to war with Russia in Ukraine. America right now is threatening to attack Venezuela, okay? South America. You have 10% of the U.S. Navy in the Caribbean, and they're about to attack Venezuela. You have China and Japan at conflict. You have India here. And you have Africa. Okay? So what's going to happen in the short term? Okay, well, what we know is that Europe is planning to go to war with Russia. Okay? Europe is about to go to war with Russia, okay? At the same time, you have a lot of immigrants in Europe. And this is going to create civil wars in Europe. Okay, civil war. So you have both war with Russia as well as civil war. So Europe is kind of screwed, okay? America has the same situation where the left-right divide is so polarized that eventually they'll go to war. If you read the news, you may have heard about the shootings at Brown University, as well as this MIT physicists who were shot, okay? So random violence will be more and more common in the United States. And you can argue that it's all deliberate because the idea is this. Let's just say you have a jar. You put red ants in the jar and black ants in a jar. They get along fine. But you take the jar and you just shake it up, and now they're at war with each other, okay? That's what's happening where the left and right, they really don't like each other. They don't talk to each other, and they refuse to engage in debate with each other. But they're not going to fight each other unless there's violence. In which case, their tribal mentality takes over and they start killing each other, okay? So we're going to expect civil war in the United States. Then you're going to have the Americans start to attack Venezuela and possibly other countries in South America. So America is in for a bad time, okay? China, yeah, I mean, Japan and China and India, they're all going to have conflicts with each other. But also, what we should expect is that America starts to embargo China, meaning America uses its sea power to block China from accessing resources from overseas. And China imports most of its oil and a lot of its food. So if there's a blockade of China, you can expect the Chinese economy to really suffer, okay? All right. And then what we can expect to happen is America at some point will go to war with Iran. And this will destroy both countries.
Before World War I, the world was filled with small conflicts. No one expected them to merge. History doesn't repeat, but it definitely rhymes. Empires don't collapse overnight. They collapse through exhaustion. Britain, the Soviet Union, every global power reaches a moment where expansion becomes unsustainable.
Okay? Iran will not lose this war, but it won't win this war either, because America is just going to bomb the crap out of Iran. It's going to send Iran back decades. But America will lose this war, but this is important because if America loses this war, it's forced out of the Middle East. And once it's forced out of the Middle East, all its military assets goes to Israel, which creates the Pax Judaica. Yeah, does that make sense, guys? That's the plan. Okay? Now you have Pax Judaica. And what Pax Judaica will do is start to control the world. Because through chaos and conflict, Pax Judaica can make a lot of money. Right? Because Pax Judaica, what's going to happen is that you have these technology companies like Google, they're going to move over to Pax Judaica and build a global surveillance state. You have civil wars, you need AI to control people. If you're going to war with Russia, you need weapons. Okay? But you also need financing as well. So you can expect a lot of banks to move to Israel, and it's possible Israel becomes now the global reserve currency because everyone is trading with Israel. If you're Russia, you need to trade your resources, right? Oil, energy, and grain, okay? So Russia controls a third of the world's carbohydrates. Guess what, guys? Israel controls Africa. So what will happen is that Russia and other countries will sign a trade agreement with Israel, and Israel becomes the center of global trade.
Capital always moves toward stability. In times of chaos, new centers emerge. This is how history reshuffles power without announcing it.
And remember that Israel has the world's best intelligence agency, the Mossad. And what they can do is go around the world and create as much chaos as possible. Okay? So while the world is burning, Israel, Pax Judaica, is profiting. And that's what the future looks like for the next 10, 20 years. And this will, of course, lead to the rise of the Antichrist, who will take control of Pax Judaica and force the world to eventually attack Israel in something called the War of Gog and Magog. And this will, of course, lead to the second coming of Jesus. So that's a grand plan, okay? All right?